In 1985, a town was shaken by the brutal murder of 16-year-old twins, Rebecca and Rachel Powell. Found in the woods with identical stab wounds to the heart, their bodies were posed as if in prayer. Despite thorough investigations, no evidence or suspects emerged. Rumors pointed to their controlling father, Dr. Henry Powell, but nothing was proven. The case grew cold, leaving the town haunted by the mystery. Each year, candles are lit in the woods to remember the twins, keeping their tragic story alive. In 1946, a series of brutal attacks in Texarkana, a small town on the Texas-Arkansas border, left the community paralyzed with fear. Dubbed the Phantom Killer, the assailant targeted young couples in parked cars or secluded areas. Over 10 weeks, he killed 5 people and seriously injured 3 others. The killer's identity remained a mystery, as he eluded extensive police investigations and manhunts. The attacks abruptly stopped, but the fear lingered, with the town implementing curfews and residents arming themselves. Numerous suspects were questioned, but no one was ever charged. The case inspired the 1976 movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Despite decades of speculation and numerous theories, the Phantom Killer of Texarkana was never caught, leaving an enduring, terrifying mystery. In 1966, the mysterious death of 18-year-old Robert Domingos and 17-year-old Linda Edwards shook the quiet town of Lompoc, California. The young couple was on a senior class beach outing when they were brutally murdered. Their bodies were found bound and shot multiple times in a remote beach shack, with no clear motive or suspect. The case bore similarities to the infamous Zodiac killer's modus operandi, leading some to speculate a connection. However, despite intensive investigations and numerous theories, no solid leads were ever established. The brutal nature of the crime and the lack of evidence left the community in fear, and the double homicide of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards remains an unsolved and chilling mystery to this day. Every night before going to bed, I check the front door of my apartment, ensuring it's locked. One night, I felt an urge to peek through the peephole. The usually quiet hallway had something unusual. The door handle of the opposite apartment was moving. It turned slowly and stopped, repeating this eerie dance. Was someone trapped? Was there a hidden message? After 10 minutes, it stopped. The next day at night, the handle moved again. I contacted building security. The owner confirmed the apartment was vacant, in the process of being sold, and had been empty for months. The mysterious movements continued for a while. New tenants moved in, and the eerie occurrences stopped. Yet, every time I pass by that door, a chill reminds me of those unexplained nights. In 1983, the Don Decker case, also known as the Rainman case, baffled both law enforcement and paranormal investigators. While on furlough from prison to attend his grandfather's funeral in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Don Decker began experiencing strange phenomena. Water inexplicably started dripping from the ceilings and walls of the house where he was staying, despite no plumbing issues. Witnesses, including police officers, reported seeing the water and feeling an eerie presence. When Decker was moved to a restaurant and later to a jail cell, the mysterious rain followed him. Even more disturbing, Decker appeared to go into trances during these occurrences. Despite multiple investigations, no scientific explanation has been found for the inexplicable indoor rain, leaving the Don Decker case shrouded in fear and mystery. It was a quiet evening when I received a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no stamp, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside, there was a single photograph of my living room taken from an angle that could only be achieved from inside the house. Chills ran down my spine. I rushed inside, locking all doors and windows, searching for any signs of intrusion. Everything seemed untouched. The next day, another envelope arrived with a photograph of my bedroom. Panic set in. I called the police, but they found no evidence of a break-in. Every day for a week, I received a new photograph, each one closer and closer to where I slept. The final photo was just of my bed, eerily empty and perfectly made. I moved out immediately. The photo stopped, but the sense of being watched never left me. In 1935, a strange and gruesome case unfolded in room 1046 of the President Hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. A man who checked in under the name Roland T. Owen was found brutally tortured, tied up, and left for dead in his room. Despite severe injuries, Owen was still alive when discovered, but died shortly after. The room showed signs of a violent struggle, yet there were no clear indications of who the assailant was. Owen's true identity was never confirmed, and he provided vague answers to the police before his death. Adding to the mystery, a series of anonymous phone calls and letters complicated the investigation. No one claimed his body, leading to a public funeral funded by donations. The true identity of Roland T. Owen and the circumstances of his death remain an eerie and unsolved mystery. One evening, as I settled into bed, I heard faint scratching sounds coming from the walls. At first, I dismissed it as mice, but the noises grew louder each night. They started to follow me from room to room, always staying just out of sight. One night, I decided to investigate. With a flashlight in hand, I followed the sound to the living room. The scratching seemed to come from behind the wallpaper. As I peeled it back, I discovered old, faded writing. The message read, "Get out, I'm still here." My blood ran cold. I never found out who or what was behind the message. The scratching continued, and I moved out shortly after. The house remains empty and no one ever dared to uncover the mystery of the wall scratches. The thought that something was trapped in the walls still haunts me. In 1947, a mysterious object crash landed near Roswell, New Mexico, sparking widespread speculation about extraterrestrial life. Initially, the U.S. military announced they had recovered a flying disc, but quickly retracted the statement, claiming it was a weather balloon. This inconsistency fueled rumors of a government cover-up. Witnesses reported strange debris and unusual metal fragments at the crash site, and some claimed to have seen alien bodies. Over the years, various theories have emerged, ranging from experimental military aircraft to alien encounters. Despite official reports dismissing the extraterrestrial angle, the Roswell incident remains one of the most debated and controversial unsolved mysteries, captivating UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists worldwide. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a series of bizarre burglaries began to unsettle the residents. Families would return home to find their possessions rearranged, but nothing was ever stolen. The intruder seemed to leave a calling card, a single black feather placed on the kitchen table. Detective Harper, assigned to the case, noticed a disturbing pattern. Each home targeted had a child who reported seeing a shadow man watching them at night. The break-ins escalated when a young boy named Tommy went missing from his bed, with only a black feather left behind. A frantic search led the police to an abandoned house at the edge of town. Inside, they discovered a hidden basement filled with children's drawings of the shadow man and wall covered in black feathers. Tommy was found, traumatized but alive, along with evidence of more planned abductions. The perpetrator was never caught, leaving the community in fear, always wondering if the shadow man would return. In 1945, the Sauter family's home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was destroyed by a fire on Christmas Eve. 5 of the 9 children were trapped inside, but their remains were never found in the ashes. The fire was initially blamed on faulty wiring, but later investigations revealed suspicious circumstances. A ladder from the house was found in an embankment far from the home, phone lines were cut, and a witness claimed to have seen the missing children in a car driving away from the scene. Despite decades of searching and numerous theories, the fate of the 5 missing Sauter children remains a haunting mystery, leaving their family with unresolved questions and a legacy of intrigue. In 1948, an unidentified man was found dead on Summerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. Known as the Summerton Man, he carried no identification, and all labels were removed from his clothing. A tiny piece of paper with the words, Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished in Persian, was found hidden in his pocket, torn from a rare book of poetry. A subsequent search led to the discovery of the book in a car, which contained a mysterious code and the unlisted phone number of a local woman who denied any knowledge of the man. Despite extensive investigations, his identity and cause of death remain unknown, making the Summerton Man one of Australia's most enduring and enigmatic mysteries. Late one night, police received a 911 call from a crying child who said she was alone and someone was trying to get into the house. The call suddenly went silent. The police rushed to the address and found the front door slightly open. They searched the house but found it empty with no signs of a struggle. The family photo on the wall was covered in dust, suggesting no one had lived there for months. Neighbors confirmed the house had been vacant for a long time. Yet, the 911 call had come from the house's landline, which was still connected. To this day, the mystery of the crying child remains unsolved, leaving the officers haunted by the unanswered call for help. In a quiet village, there was a legend about a mysterious figure known as the Night Walker. Every full moon, villagers would hear soft footsteps outside their windows, but no one ever saw who it was. One night, a curious boy named Tim decided to stay awake and find out who the Night Walker was. Tim hid by his window, and just as the clock struck midnight, he saw a shadowy figure gliding through the streets. The figure stopped in front of each house, peering into windows before vanishing into the darkness. The next morning, Tim told the villagers, but when they searched, there were no footprints or signs of anyone. The Night Walker was never caught or seen again, and to this day, people still wonder who or what it was, and why it only appeared on full moons. The Voich Manuscript is a mysterious book that has puzzled historians, linguists, and cryptographers for centuries. Discovered by antique book dealer Wilfred Voynich in 1912, the manuscript is written in an unknown script and filled with strange illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, and human figures. Despite numerous attempts to decipher the text, no one has been able to determine its meaning or origin. Theories about the manuscript range from it being a medieval cipher to an elaborate hoax. The Voynich Manuscript remains one of the most enigmatic and intriguing artifacts in the history of literature. In the hospital I work, we shut down room 9 in our ICU because nearly every patient placed there since Eleanor passed away has reported seeing a woman dressed in a long, white gown by their bedside. This spectral figure never makes eye contact. Instead, she gazes out the window positioned to the left of the patient, just above their head. This window overlooks the hospital's old graveyard where previous staff members who have died were buried. Eleanor was a nurse who died in a car crash near the hospital back in the 1960s. She was on her 20s, and all the patients describe her as a young woman. Regardless, room 9 has become our storage room now, a place where no one ventures alone unless absolutely necessary. In 1928, a young boy named Walter Collins disappeared from his home in Los Angeles. Months later, a boy claiming to be Walter was found in Illinois and brought back home. However, Walter's mother, Christine Collins, insisted the boy was not her son, despite police pressure to accept him. Subsequent investigations confirmed the boy was an imposter. The real Walter Collins was never found. Christine's relentless search uncovered a connection to the Wineville chicken coop murders, where Gordon Northcott was convicted of murdering several boys, but he denied killing Walter. Despite extensive efforts and numerous leads, Walter's fate remains unknown, making his disappearance one of the most haunting and unresolved cases in American history. I love taking long hot showers before bed to relax. As the light switches outside of the bathroom, whenever I'm in there too long, my girlfriend turns the light switch off and on multiple times to signal she needs it. One night, she was out with friends, and I decided to shower early. Suddenly, the lights flickered just like she does. I thought she was home, but then the light stayed off. I yelled for her to turn it back on, but there was no response. Annoyed, I stepped out, only to find the house empty. I texted her, and she confirmed she was still out. I checked every room, but no one was there. So, who had turned the lights off? In 2000, Zeb Quinn, an 18-year-old from Asheville, North Carolina, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. After finishing his shift at Walmart, he met a friend, Robert Owens, to discuss buying a car. They were seen together at a gas station, but Zeb never made it home. His car was found 2 weeks later with its headlights on, a puppy inside, and a large pair of lips drawn in lipstick on the rear window. Strangely, Owens showed up at the hospital with injuries, which he claimed were from a car accident that same night. Despite extensive investigations, no evidence has surfaced to explain Zeb's disappearance. Years later, Owens was convicted of an unrelated double murder, but Zeb Quinn's fate remains an unsolved mystery. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Mr. and Mrs. Thompson left their 7-year-old son, Max, at home for just a few hours. They expected him to greet them when they returned, but he was nowhere in sight. They found him huddled in a closet, shaking with fear. Max whispered about strange noises outside and footsteps on the gravel, whispers in a language he couldn't understand, and shadows passing by the windows. Then, he heard a loud thud against the door and hid in the closet. The Thompsons searched the house and perimeter, but found no sign of a break-in. They called the police, who found nothing unusual. The strangest part was, their normally calm dog now seemed scared and more alert at night. They've since installed security cameras around the house, hoping to catch anything unusual if it happens again. But Max's story remains a mystery. The Miller family huddled on the couch, watching a scary movie, but suddenly, a light growl echoed from the dark corner of the living room. Everyone froze. There, in the gloom, sat a big albino dog. Its fur shone angry white, and its eyes reflected the TV light with an unnatural red glow. The dog sat perfectly still, staring right at them. A terrified silence filled the room, then, a loud rapping came from the front door. Dad cautiously approached the door, the others following close behind. He peered through the peephole but saw nothing. He unlocked the door but nothing was there. Confused, they turned back to the living room, but the big albino dog was gone. The silence returned, thicker and more unsettling than before. Natalie loved taking baths, but tonight, the water felt extra cold. She shivered and pulled her knees up, splashing the water. Suddenly, a long, stringy thing brushed against her leg. Natalie shrieked and scrambled out. She looked in the tub, but nothing was there. Just a single, long hair floating on the surface, different from her short blonde hair. Natalie wrapped in a towel, still shivering, even though the bathroom was warm. She couldn't shake the feeling of something watching her from the dark corners. Sarah, a librarian, disappeared on a crisp autumn evening. She was last seen walking home from work. When she didn't return, a search was launched, but the only trace ever found was her neatly folded coat on her doorstep. Weeks turned into months, and the whole town had theories. Some believed Sarah had run away, others whispered about a hidden lover. But the strangest part was the phone calls. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, Sarah's mother received a call at midnight. There was never any sound on the other end, just a silence that echoed with a sense of unease. The calls stopped after Sarah's mother passed away, but the town remains haunted by the unanswered questions. What happened to Sarah? And who, or what, was on the other end of those calls? I had just moved to a new town, and I rented a room. The house was a little old, and the landlord, a quiet old man, lived there too, keeping mostly to himself. On my first night, I woke up suddenly to see him standing by my bed, holding one of my shirts and staring right at me. I was so scared I ran to the bathroom, but I could hear strange noises, like furniture being moved and things falling. I decided I had to leave. As I hurried towards the front door, the noises stopped. I looked back into my room, and the old man was still there, frozen, staring at me, and nothing in the room seemed out of place. I dashed out into the night, my heart racing with fear. Even now, I can't explain what happened. The mystery of that night still gives me chills. Mr. Snuggles, the neighborhood Doberman, wasn't himself anymore. The once playful pup was all skin and bones, with a cough that sounded like rocks rattling in his chest. But it was his eyes that freaked everyone out. They used to be warm and brown, but now they were cloudy white and seemed to glow in the dark. People started walking their dogs on the other side of the street to avoid Mr. Snuggles. Then, one day, both Mr. Snuggles and his owner disappeared. The police arrived and searched the place high and low, finding nothing. But the strangest thing is that people walking by swore they could still hear that awful cough echoing from the empty house, a constant reminder of the mysterious disappearance. One night at the hospital, Clara was assigned to the oncology unit, where a patient was nearing the end of their life. This patient had been unconscious for days. In the dead of night, Clara entered the room to check on the patient. To her shock, the patient suddenly sat up in bed, fixing her with a terrified gaze. The patient pleaded, "Don't let them take me." Bewildered, my friend asked who she meant. The patient whispered about a dark figure looming overhead. 1 minute after, the patient passed away. In 1987, Emily, a 17-year-old high school senior, vanished on Halloween night after leaving a local costume party. After 3 days of searching, her body was found in the lake, showing signs of multiple stab wounds. The police were baffled by the brutal crime, but the mystery deepened when, a week later, Emily's family started receiving letters written in her handwriting. For 2 months, every week brought a new letter filled with random, eerie stories, unmistakably penned by Emily. Despite the letter's odd and unsettling nature, the family could not decipher any clues about the sender's identity. After 2 months, the letters abruptly stopped, leaving the family and the entire town haunted by the unanswered questions. To this day, the case remains unsolved, with the strange letters adding a chilling layer to the tragedy of Emily's murder. In late December 1964, the local government abruptly imposed a curfew, citing an imminent massive storm. Police cars patrolled, urging everyone to stay indoors, but the clear skies raised suspicions. Tension grew as law enforcement aggressively enforced the curfew. However, rumors started spreading about a strange creature, which had been seen around town, with dozens reporting eerie encounters, deepening the town's fear. At 3 a.m., the silence broke with the sound of several government vehicles speeding through a main street. Residents speculated they were transporting the creature. The next day, with no storm in sight, the government apologized, claiming a forecasting error and insisting they only aimed to ensure safety. They never addressed the strange sightings or the night's events again, leaving the town with an unsettling mystery and lingering fear of what might still be out there. In a village in Portugal, Maria and Joe had 3 children, Lucia, Pedro and little Tomas. For a week, the family's friends couldn't get in touch with them. Concerned, they called the police, who discovered the house empty, yet unsettlingly undisturbed. After a week of frantic searching, police found Maria, Lucia, and Pedro buried deep under the backyard stairs. The community was shocked, but the mystery deepened when Joe, the father, was found dead 2 weeks later on the other side of town, under mysterious circumstances. However, the most chilling part of the story remains unsolved. Tomas, the 5-year-old boy, was never found. Despite extensive searches and countless theories, his disappearance remains a haunting enigma, casting a perpetual shadow over the village. One chilly night in 1973, a group of friends went camping in a forest. They set up camp and built a fire, but as it got later, a thick fog covered their campsite. The friends began to feel uneasy, and around midnight, they started hearing strange whispers, soft at first, then louder. They looked around, but couldn't see anyone. The whispers seemed to be coming from all directions. They heard distant cries and unsettling murmurs, but saw no one nearby. The friends decided to leave the area quickly, but the fog made it hard to see. While trying to find their way back, they stumbled upon an old, empty cabin they hadn't seen before. They looked inside, but found no one. The friends left the forest and told authorities about the whispers and the cabin. Search teams found no sign of the old structure, and the friends never went back. The mystery of the whispers in the fog remains unsolved. In our neighborhood stood this old, spooky house. Its gate was always half open, but nobody ever seemed to live there. Dogs passing by would bark like crazy, as if they sensed something scary inside. One day, a guy let his dog go in to sniff around. But then, he heard his dog yelp, and everything went quiet. Terrified, he went in to find his pet, but there was no sign of him. Even when the police came, they couldn't find the dog or anyone else in the house. It left everyone puzzled and spooked, with the feeling that something strange was going on there, but to this day, no one has seen the dog again, or even knows if someone lives in that house. My wife and I moved into a new house in a small village on the countryside of Poland. It didn't take long and strange things started happening. Objects shifted, noises pierced the silence. We laughed it off until my wife woke me one night, trembling. She swore a figure stood by our bed, but I saw nothing. Then came whispers, chilling voices without origin. Doors slammed, temperatures plunged. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, not like any I've heard. They stopped outside our door. We held tight, fearing the worst. And then suddenly, the door creaked open into darkness. We fled that night, and only came back the next morning to pack our things to leave and never come back. John was driving late at night, his headlights piercing the darkness when he spotted a figure standing by the roadside. As he approached, he saw a young girl, her eyes vacant, without any expression, holding a tattered doll. Ignoring an instinctive urge to flee, he slowed down, intending to offer help. But as he rolled down his window, she whispered,
"He is still here."
After that, she vanished into thin air. Shaken to the core, he sped away, haunted by the unsettling encounter and the unanswered question: who, or what, was still here? In 1963, in a small town in Maine, teenagers dared each other to visit the old, creepy Holloway Farm on Halloween night. The farm, long abandoned except for old Mrs. Holloway, was rumored to be haunted. Tommy, the bravest, ventured inside alone. As he explored, he heard whispers and footsteps. In an upstairs room, he saw a ghostly old woman with a twisted, angry face. Terrified, he ran out, but the next day, Tommy was gone, leaving only a note saying he needed to leave. He was never seen again. Locals believe Mrs. Holloway's ghost still haunts the farm, searching for her lost family. A bunch of friends threw a big party by the lake. The water looked so inviting under the moonlight that they decided to take a dip. But then, one of the friends started saying the water felt super hot, like it was burning him. His friends didn't get it, they thought it was weird since they didn't feel a thing. Still, the friend wanted to join the fun, he jumped right in. At first, his pals thought he was a champ for holding his breath so long. But as time passed, they got worried, something was wrong. They all dove into the water, searching for Alex, but he was nowhere to be found. Panic set in, and they called for help. The police came and searched, but Alex was gone without a trace. Days passed, then weeks, but Alex never turned up. His friends were left with questions and sadness, wondering what happened to their buddy under the dark waters of the lake. On a small island in Scotland, there was a lighthouse where 3 men, James, Thomas, and Donald, worked. One day in 1900, their light went out, and a ship noticed something was wrong. When people went to check, they found the lighthouse empty with meals left uneaten and no sign of the men. Outside, some things were broken, and the last notes in their logbook mentioned fear of a storm, though the weather reports showed it was calm. It's thought a giant wave might have swept them away, but nobody knows for sure what happened. The disappearance of the lighthouse keepers remains a creepy, unsolved mystery. I was walking downtown shopping, and suddenly I noticed people started giggling at me, some were laughing outright. It felt weird. I passed my hand over my face and felt a jelly-like sensation, as if my face were melting. I grew desperate as the laughter around me grew louder. Panicking, I ran into the nearest shop to check myself in a mirror. To my surprise, nothing was wrong with me. I looked completely fine. As I continued walking, everything seemed normal again. No one was laughing or even noticing me. After this bizarre episode, I went to the doctor for a thorough examination, but all tests came back normal. Over the next few days, I questioned my sanity, but nothing like it ever happened again. It's been 37 years since that day, and I still have no explanation for what occurred. On a stormy night, little Lily lay scared in her bed, clutching her teddy bear tightly. Suddenly, the lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. Lily heard a noise from under her bed, like scratching. She was too scared to open her eyes as the scratching grew louder, almost touching her foot. Lily screamed and jumped out of bed. Just then, the lights flickered back on. Peeking under the bed, Lily found nothing, but she spotted a muddy paw print on the carpet. They searched the whole house but found nothing unusual. To this day, they wonder about the mysterious muddy paw print. In a quiet village lived old Arthur, a deaf and mute man who kept to himself. One eerie night, he emerged from his home, gesturing urgently, pointing to the house in distress. Concerned, the neighbors rushed inside of the house to check what was wrong. They searched every corner, but found nothing unusual. When they returned, they discovered Arthur lying on the path, unresponsive, his eyes clouded over. For 2 long months, Arthur remained in a coma before passing. Despite efforts to uncover the truth, no one could explain what had happened inside his house that night. The village was left with unanswered questions, haunted by the inexplicable events surrounding old Arthur's plight. To this day, the truth remains elusive, casting a shadow of unease over the community. In the psychiatric hospital, a strange night unfolded. Suddenly, almost all the patients began acting weirdly all at once. Some screamed desperately, some had seizures, and others were so scared they couldn't move. The workers were baffled. It sounded like pure chaos. Then, after 5 intense minutes, everything stopped abruptly. The patients calmed down as if nothing had happened. The staff couldn't explain what had caused the bizarre episode. Some thought it was collective hysteria, while others feared something supernatural, but no one had answers. The incident remained a haunting mystery, leaving everyone in the hospital unsettled by the inexplicable events of that night. One chilly night, a school trip turned into a nightmare. The 5th graders were gathered around a bonfire in the woods roasting marshmallows. Suddenly, a star seemed to get bigger, falling towards the earth. At first, everyone thought it was a shooting star, but it got closer and brighter until it crashed into the woods nearby. Curious and scared, the group ran to the impact site, finding a smoking crater but no object. As they stood there, the kids began to feel a strange tingling on their skin, which soon turned into a painful burning sensation. The teachers quickly took the kids to the hospital, where the doctors treated their mysterious burns, which lasted for 2 weeks before finally fading away. Strangely, the teachers didn't feel anything at all. Despite many investigations, no one could explain what caused the burns or why only the kids were affected. To this day, the mystery remains unsolved. The kids, now grown-ups, still remember, and no one knows what really happened that night in the woods. 2 students were spending time alone in a car on a deserted road. When they were ready to leave, the car wouldn't start, which worried the girlfriend. The boyfriend offered to walk for help and instructed her to hide under a blanket in the back of the car, staying out of sight and not leaving until he returned. Time passed, and he did not return. Soon, she heard a tapping noise on the roof of the car, which continued throughout the night as she remained hidden. As the morning light appeared, she heard footsteps approaching the car and a man's voice calling out to her. It was the local sheriff. He instructed her to exit the car and walk to the waiting sheriff's car down the road. As she walked toward the sheriff's car, she glanced back one last time, searching for any sign of her boyfriend. But from that point on, he was nowhere to be found. To this day, there has been no trace of him, and no one has heard from him since that night. Jenny was a mom who always warned her daughter to steer clear of manholes. But one day, the daughter accidentally stepped on one, and it broke. She fell inside and yelled for help, crying desperately, saying she was okay but scared because she saw something spooky standing nearby. Then, she suddenly stopped talking. Firefighters rushed to rescue her, but when they got her out, she looked terrified and couldn't speak anymore. Even after looking into it, they never figured out what she saw down there. Sadly, she never spoke again. In a fog-shrouded town, an ancient church stood abandoned at the edge of town. The locals whispered about a haunting presence inside, but one dark evening, a curious young woman named Emily decided to investigate. With only a flashlight, Emily entered the old church. Inside, she found strange scratch marks on the pews and walls, like desperate warnings. As she climbed the stairs to the belfry, she encountered a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, which screamed a chilling, otherworldly cry. Panicked, Emily fled the church and ran home. Though she escaped, she couldn't forget the terrifying figure. In the days that followed, strange occurrences plagued the town. Whispers in the night, doors creaking open, and phantom footsteps. The town was left questioning what had been awakened within the church and whether its eerie presence would resurface again. In a quiet town deep in Ireland's countryside, 5 people vanished one evening. It was like any other day until they all just disappeared into thin air. Their families were scared and told the police everything. But even after looking everywhere, they found no clues. Days passed, then months, but the mystery stayed unsolved. Then, something strange came up. All the families mentioned getting a silent phone call on the same day their loved ones disappeared. It sounded weird, but maybe it was a big clue. To this day, people still wonder if those calls have something to do with the vanishing act. Or was it just another strange coincidence, the town's still waiting for answers? In a small town nestled deep in the woods, the sun rarely reached the forest floor, casting an eerie shadow over the old, abandoned mine that stood on the outskirts. One night in November, a chilling cry echoed through the streets, causing even the bravest to shudder. It came from the mine, long rumored to be cursed. The townspeople avoided it at all costs. The next morning, they found something horrifying, a bloodstained shoe at the mine's entrance belonging to young Abby, who'd vanished the night before. Her parents swore she had been home safe in bed. A search party combed the woods but found no trace of her. Some speculated she'd been lured by whispers from the mine. Others believed she'd stumbled upon a long-buried secret. Despite the town's best efforts, Abby was never found, and her disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Those who dare to go near the mine say they hear faint whispers of a little girl crying for help. In a quiet town, a family of four vanished from their home on a cold November night in 1983. The Thompsons were well-known and liked in the community. One evening, neighbors noticed that their house, usually bustling with life, was eerily silent. The lights were on, but no one answered the door. Police arrived to find a pot of stew, still simmering on the stove, the TV playing a show, and the table set for dinner. The family's car was in the driveway, and their jackets hung by the door. No signs of struggle, no note, nothing disturbed except the family was gone. Despite exhaustive searches and endless theories, the Thompsons were never found. Their disappearance remains one of the most unsettling and enduring mysteries. When I was a kid, I was at my friend's house one night and his father offered to drive me home. He had a pickup truck, so he let my friend and I ride in the back, enjoying the wind on our faces. Halfway home, in the middle of nowhere with only grass fields around us, we noticed something strange in the sky. It was coming down fast, and we were both shocked and scared, unsure of what it could be. As it got closer, we saw it was a large ball of lights that suddenly fell into the field. The lights turned off immediately upon impact, and eerily there was no sound at all, despite the apparent force with which it landed. My friend's father stopped the truck suddenly. He climbed out and came to the back where we sat. Staring at us with a serious expression, he said, "Do not ever tell this to anyone. You kids hear me. Forget this ever happened." We continued our journey in silence. To this day, I wonder what fell into that field and why his father was so insistent about keeping it a secret. I was driving through the winding mountain roads at night. My wife and I found ourselves pursued by a car hurtling toward us at an alarming speed. Concerned for our safety, I eased off the gas to allow it to pass. But as soon as the car was about to overtake us, the car vanished into thin air. It completely disappeared. It was suddenly a silence as my wife looked at me extremely scared. We exchanged a wordless glance, a shiver running down our spines, and we still don't know what happened to the vanished car. Matt, a young guy full of curiosity, decided to explore an old German bunker from the Second World War hidden in the forest. As he went deeper inside, the darkness grew thicker, and suddenly strange smoke appeared out of nowhere, swirling around him. Then, in the middle of this eerie fog, he heard a whisper close to his ear, saying, "Save me." Terrified, Matt spun around, but nobody was there. He searched everywhere, but found no one. Scared out of his wits, he hurriedly left the bunker, still puzzled about who or what could have whispered to him in that spooky place.